In the affluent community of Maple Grove, nestled in the outskirts of Chicago, the Parkers and the Reeds were the epitome of suburban success. Daniel Parker, a 43-year-old corporate lawyer, and his wife, Olivia, a 41-year-old interior designer, had been married for 15 years. Their neighbors and close friends, Thomas Reed, a 45-year-old investment banker, and his wife, Samantha, a 39-year-old real estate agent, had been together for 12 years. From the outside, both couples appeared to have it all: successful careers, beautiful homes, and active social lives. They were fixtures at community events, country club gatherings, and neighborhood barbecues. But beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect lives, a web of desire, jealousy, and forbidden fantasies was about to unravel their world. The story began on a warm summer evening in June 2022 at the Parkers' annual midsummer party. As the night wore on and the alcohol flowed freely, a casual joke about partner swapping took an unexpected turn. What started as playful banter soon evolved into a serious discussion about exploring new boundaries in their marriages. Over the next few weeks, the two couples met several times to discuss the idea. They set ground rules, established boundaries, and agreed to a trial period. The excitement of their secret arrangement added a new spark to their lives, and for a while, it seemed like they had found a way to have it all. However, as summer turned to fall, the carefully constructed balance began to shift. Daniel found himself increasingly drawn to Samantha, captivated by her vivacity and charm. Olivia, in turn, was developing deeper feelings for Thomas, attracted to his quiet strength and attentiveness. As the leaves changed color and the air grew crisp, the dynamics between the two couples became increasingly complex. What had started as a mutual agreement to spice up their marriages was turning into a tangled web of emotions and unspoken desires. Daniel began finding excuses to spend more time with Samantha outside of their arranged meetings. He would drop by her real estate office unannounced, offering to take her to lunch. Samantha, flattered by the attention, found herself looking forward to these impromptu visits. She told herself it was harmless, just two friends enjoying each other's company. Meanwhile, Olivia and Thomas were developing a deep emotional connection. They would spend hours talking about their hopes, fears, and dreams, conversations that had long since disappeared from their respective marriages. Olivia found herself confiding in Thomas about her growing dissatisfaction with Daniel, while Thomas shared his concerns about Samantha's increasing detachment. As October approached, the tension between the four friends was palpable. At a dinner party hosted by the Reeds, Daniel's lingering glances at Samantha did not go unnoticed by Thomas. Olivia, too, felt a pang of jealousy watching her husband's obvious attraction to their friend. The evening ended on a strained note, with forced smiles and stilted goodbyes. The following week, things came to a head when Olivia discovered a series of intimate text messages between Daniel and Samantha on Daniel's phone. Hurt and angry, she confronted Daniel, who defensively claimed it was all part of their arrangement. The argument that ensued was explosive, with years of unspoken resentments bubbling to the surface. Across the street, a similar scene was unfolding in the Reed household. Thomas, suspicious of Samantha's frequent work meetings, had followed her one afternoon only to find her meeting Daniel at a secluded cafe on the outskirts of town. When confronted, Samantha broke down, admitting to having developed feelings for Daniel that went beyond their original agreement. As November arrived, bringing with it a chill in the air, the once close friendship between the two couples had devolved into a cold war of sidelong glances and thinly veiled accusations. The partner-swapping experiment, which had seemed so exciting just months ago, now threatened to tear apart the very foundations of their lives. The tension between the two couples reached a boiling point in mid-November. Daniel, consumed by his infatuation with Samantha, suggested to her that they leave their spouses and start a new life together. Samantha, torn between her growing feelings for Daniel and her loyalty to Thomas, asked for time to think. Olivia, suspecting that Daniel was planning something drastic, confided in Thomas. She told him about Daniel's suggestion to Samantha, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. Thomas, already grappling with his own emotions, felt a surge of rage at the betrayal. On the night of November 20th, the four agreed to meet at the Parkers' home to discuss the future of their arrangement. The atmosphere was charged with tension as they gathered in the living room, each person nursing a glass of wine. Daniel, emboldened by alcohol and his conviction that he and Samantha belonged together, announced his intention to leave Olivia. He told the group that he and Samantha were in love and planned to start a new life together. Samantha, caught off guard by Daniel's declaration, sat in stunned silence. Thomas, his face contorted with fury, lunged at Daniel. The two men grappled, knocking over a side table and shattering a lamp. Olivia screamed at them to stop, while Samantha watched in horror, tears streaming down her face. In the chaos, Daniel stumbled backwards, losing his balance. He fell, striking his head on the corner of the marble fireplace with a sickening thud. Blood began to pool around his motionless body as the room fell silent. Olivia rushed to Daniel's side, desperately feeling for a pulse. Finding none, she looked up at the others, her eyes wide with shock. "He's dead," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Panic set in as the gravity of the situation became clear. Thomas, his anger replaced by fear, began pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. Samantha sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Olivia, still kneeling by Daniel's body, seemed frozen in place. As the initial shock wore off, the three survivors began to grasp the implications of what had happened. Their perfect lives, their reputations, everything they had worked for was now at risk. The question that hung in the air was, what do we do now? In the tense moments that followed, it was Olivia who broke the silence. With a calmness that surprised even her, she laid out a plan. They would stage the scene to look like an accident. Daniel had been drinking, lost his balance, and hit his head. It wasn't far from the truth after all. Thomas, his legal mind kicking into gear, agreed it was their best option. Samantha, still in shock, nodded mutely. Over the next hour, they meticulously rearranged the room, cleaning up signs of the struggle and positioning Daniel's body near the fireplace. Olivia called 911, her voice breaking as she reported finding her husband unconscious. When the paramedics and police arrived, they found three distraught friends who had been enjoying a quiet dinner party when tragedy struck. In the days that followed, the three worked to maintain their story. They attended Daniel's funeral together, presenting a united front of grief to the community. Privately, however, the weight of their secret began to take its toll. Samantha, racked with guilt, became withdrawn and depressed. Thomas, struggling with the knowledge that his actions had led to Daniel's death, turned to alcohol for solace. Olivia, outwardly the grieving widow, found herself oddly relieved to be free from her failing marriage. As weeks turned into months, suspicions began to surface. Detective Laura Hawkins, assigned to review Daniel's case, noticed inconsistencies in the statements given by Olivia, Thomas, and Samantha. Small details that didn't quite add up, hesitations in their recollections that seemed out of place for such a traumatic event. In February 2023, nearly 3 months after Daniel's death, Detective Hawkins called the three in for separate interviews. Under the pressure of intense questioning, their carefully constructed story began to unravel. It was Samantha who finally broke. Overwhelmed by guilt and unable to bear the secret any longer, she confessed to the true events of that night. Thomas and Olivia, confronted with Samantha's statement, had no choice but to admit their roles in covering up Daniel's death. The revelation sent shockwaves through Maple Grove. The two couples who had once been the envy of the community were now at the center of a scandal that made national headlines. In the end, Thomas was charged with manslaughter and sentenced to 7 years in prison. Olivia and Samantha both received suspended sentences for their roles in covering up the crime. The once pristine reputations of all involved were irreparably damaged. As for Maple Grove, the community that had prided itself on its perfect image was forced to confront the reality that even in the most seemingly ideal neighborhoods, dark secrets can lurk behind closed doors. The tragic tale of the Parkers and the Reeds served as a cautionary story about the dangers of pushing marital boundaries and the devastating consequences of unchecked desires.